Good morning. Even as China opens up a new front in Depsang, which is to the north of the Galwan Valley where the clashes were taking place till now, and satellite images show that some of the structures which the Chinese had put in Galwan and which were demolished subsequently are once again back in place. The government's moves, however, to contain China or to send message across to China are sending shockwaves across the industry. Though there are no written rules on this, importers are finding, in fact, importers and producers who import a lot of their components, they are finding their shipments are getting delayed as customs officials are clearing their consignments after physical inspection. For industries that work on a minimum inventory or just-in-time sort of inventory, this is a real challenge. And while in fact the mobile phone manufacturing firms have already written a letter on this to the Finance Minister, to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, basically saying that this has to be fixed. Other companies are equally worried. In fact, a Calcutta Customs House Agents Union Association has written to its members saying that they have been informally told by the authorities that China-based consignments have to be delayed. And if this move isn't bad enough, it comes on top of several other moves along similar lines. The government e-marketplace, what is called the GEM portal. The GEM portal is where goods are sold to PSUs and government departments. It's not all good, but there's a beginning there. It's about 50 to 60,000 crores get sold a year. So on the GEM portal, for example, the GEM portal has told suppliers who sell goods that they have to indicate the country of their origin on their product. In fact, the GEM portal has a new feature which allows buyers to choose from products that meet a minimum 50% local content, and only firms with a certain local content will be allowed to participate in certain kind of bids. Even purchase preferences are to be given to those companies that have a higher local content. In fact, this isn't all. There are news on how the Commerce Ministry is in discussions with a lot of e-commerce portals like Amazon and Walmart on basically ensuring that their suppliers start labeling their goods based on where they come from. So I think the e-commerce companies have said that it might take some time, but as they seem to be, whether it takes place in a week or whether it takes place in 2 weeks, certainly the decision is, or the discussion is on the fact that they will have to start labeling their goods by the country of origin. Now there's a problem here. There are lots of problems, but if I just begin with one problem, how do you determine the country of origin? Now in a case of a mobile phone or something where it clearly says made in Korea or made in China or made in Taiwan, it's pretty easy to figure out where the country of origin is. But what happens in the case of, let's say, an Apple phone or a Samsung phone or a Xiaomi phone for that matter? A lot of these phones are made in India, so to speak. So they're made in India, but they use components that are made in China. So Samsung is a Korean company, Apple is an American company, but what if they're using components that are made in China? Or let's say they're using components that are made in Korea or Japan or some other country, but those components in turn are using Chinese components. Now, are these products Indian? Are they Chinese? And does the government plan to have an army of inspectors who is now going to go and check whether the labeling of millions of goods in lakhs of outlets across the country is kosher? Is this the new face of the license Raj? These are a lot of worrying questions which importers are grappling with. And as an aside, given the fact that the bronze cladding that was used for the Statue of Unity, Sardar Patel statue, which is called the Statue of Unity, given the fact that this bronze cladding was cast in a Chinese foundry, basically because India didn't have a foundry which is large enough to be able to handle the size, I think it's going to be pretty much impossible to build a Statue of Unity today. A Times of India report, it's an old report. So a Times of India report, for example, I remember, quoted an L&T statement around the time when the controversy was at its peak, saying that Chinese imports were around 9% of the value of the project. So a 9% value of the project is not small, and going by today's standards, maybe the Statue of Unity would just have a problem getting off the ground. The government's plans to boost local production in India of mobile phones for exports got a big shot in the arm yesterday. It got a big shot in the arm with several firms, some of whom are contract manufacturers for Apple, with several firms putting in their application for the scheme, under the scheme. So under the scheme, each big player like an Apple or a Samsung or a Xiaomi for that matter, every player is expected to scale up to around 35 to 40 billion dollars of annual exports within 2 to 3 years here. So while the domestic value addition under this scheme is not expected to be more than about 20 to 25%, maybe 30% in a few years, what it essentially does is it promises 35 to 40 billion dollars of potential exports from each player. And you juxtapose this number against the dramatic increase in India's trade deficit in electronics, and suddenly this scheme makes a lot of sense here. So the trade deficit in electronics, for example, used to be about 17 billion or thereabouts in FY8, in financial year 2007-2008, and this rose to $45 billion in FY19, and it's going to rise even in future. So any scheme which can get you a large amount of export is to be welcomed. And there are two reasons why this scheme will do very well. One is that the way the scheme is structured, you have to produce a phone that retails that sells for more than $200 a piece, and only then will you get the benefit. Now, so this is for local production, but since phones of over $200 are essentially exported, what it really means is that there will be a large amount of export. And just to give you a sense of the potential, Apple's global merchandise business is around $230 billion right now, and 90-95% of this is serviced out of China. So to get more of Apple's vendors into India then means that over time India can hope to sell the iPad, the Macs, and other various Apple merchandise to various parts of the country. The next story is an unfortunate story. Delhi has now become the country's corona capital. Up till now, Mumbai was the hotbed of corona cases, but as we've seen over the last few weeks, with Mumbai managing to somehow slow down the spread of the infection, especially in the slums like Dharavi, the number of daily fresh infections in Mumbai has slowed down dramatically. In Delhi, on the other hand, Delhi has been handled very poorly, partly due to the fact that the powers are divided between the center and the state, and for a variety of reasons, Delhi has been handled very badly. There have been pretty low levels of testing for a long time. There has been very, very poor levels of quarantining, and in fact, Satyendra Jain, the health minister, had in one interview admitted that contact tracing was being done only for a very limited number of contacts. Now, with Home Minister Amit Shah taking charge over the last few days, there is no doubt that the testing levels in the capital have increased manifold, and in fact, this is something that Financial Express has been recommending for a very long time. Given the shortage of doctors, given the shortage of hospitals in the city, we've been recommending that the army be called out to set up field hospitals and to man various hospitals there. So the Home Minister has said that the army is going to be manning a lot of the hospitals. The new facilities that are being set up, one is in the Radha Swami Satsang Beas campus. Then they are hospitals in railway wagons. So the army is going to be manning most of them. Now, whether this is good enough is not clear, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And we don't know how quickly things can turn around, but just to give you a statistic, about a week, 10 days ago, Mumbai, a few weeks ago, maybe 15 days ago, Mumbai had just one ICU bed left and 11 ventilators. So it looked like Mumbai was Mumbai has always been on the brink of bursting for a very long time, but that day it looked like Mumbai was going to have a severe problem with people dying on the streets, and then suddenly, 10 days, 15 days later, Mumbai looks a lot under control. So there is no reason for us to, we can certainly hope that things in Delhi can quickly turn around now that the central government is paying a lot more attention, and now that the army and the paramilitary forces have also been called out. The sad saga of Patanjali and its coronel continues. The Uttarakhand government, for example, has said that Patanjali never ever applied for a corona cure medicine. It basically just told the Uttarakhand government that it was producing some immunity boosters, and that is what it got, a license for. Other newspapers, in fact, have gone a step further, and they've reported that, the patients chosen for the clinical trials by Patanjali were essentially people who had very mild cases. And amazingly, in some cases, these people were even given allopathic drugs to cure symptoms like fever and things like that. So this episode not only casts Patanjali in a very sad light, it makes India's entire Ayurvedic industry and the sort of system which governs it, which gives it clearances for new medicines, which decides on the trials, which checks whether the claims made are actually correct or not. So all of those has been put under a cloud by this Patanjali episode. Hopefully, as the government investigates it further, over time, presumably Patanjali will be submitting more data to the government. So hopefully, when there's more data put out, hopefully there'll be some more clarity. But right now, certainly not just Patanjali, but the entire Ayurvedic industry in the country gets portrayed in a bad light thanks to this. We talked yesterday about how there's a global fear of hacking increasing down dramatically. Australia suffered a very bad hack attack over the weekend, and now with the fears of hacking increasing in India, the government, it appears, has asked the phone manufacturers to submit their source codes to it. Now this is deeply problematic. We have an editorial on this. This is deeply problematic, but the source code, in a sense, is like the secret sauce. It's the secret ingredient in a Coca-Cola. So it just tells you every little secret which the phone manufacturers have. And if that source code then leaks out to other people, as it can once it's in the hands of the government, it causes a real problem. So what we've been recommending is that why do you need to have the source code? Just simply subject each phone to massive testing, get people to try and hack into it just to see how vulnerable phones are. So let's see where that goes. Next story, after work from home, telemedicine, as is obvious, has got a big boost from the whole corona episode, the corona pandemic. And our EFE page today basically talks about a digital platform for COVID telemedicine. Basically, it's a platform which has been among the other promoters of it, our former Infosys chief Chris Gopalakrishnan. So basically, this is a digital platform which provides for diagnosis, tests, and all kinds of such treatment and whatever basically a corona patient can require. Another interesting app or platform that we talk about is an agri-tech new age platform called Unnati. It's early days yet, but platforms or apps or solutions such as these that I've just talked about are really going to be critical if India really has to develop quickly and rapidly along the lines that we talked about. So let's hope that these solutions gather pace, that they take off. For right now, let's just hope that they don't have Chinese investors, since clearly that's one area where there's going to be an immediate problem and there's going to be a big hit. So any startup that has Chinese investment is going to take a big hit, because it's not going to be able to raise Chinese investment easily for at least some time to come. We're running out of time, but just quickly a quick wrap on some of the other stories. Till some months ago, when PPE was in short supply, we've all paid black market prices. We've seen how how people how the cost of N95 masks and other PPE just dramatically shot through the roof here. Now the amazing thing is that as more and more Indian companies have started producing PPE, in the case of Gujarat, which is what our story is about, there's such an oversupply that PPE prices have actually come down by half in the state. A Bloomberg story on our front page today has juicy details of a dispute involving the Hinduja brothers. In 2014, it seemed that the Hinduja brothers, they've always been a very close-knit family. All decisions have been taken together in a variety of areas. So in 2014, it appears they decided to actually seal this in a formal manner, and they all signed a letter which essentially said that each brother's assets belong to everyone, and that each one would appoint the other one or another one of them as the executor to their will. So it's very, very sort of Hindu united family, if you will. Now it appears, and this is what the dispute is about, now it appears that three of the brothers want a share in the bank owned by Sri Chand Hinduja, who's the oldest brother. But right now Sri Chand Hinduja, who's ailing, and his daughter have gone to the court, and they basically said that we want that letter to be declared worthless. The other brothers basically said that declaring the letter worthless would go against the group principles, which have always centered around family values, essentially that everything belongs to everyone and nothing belongs to any one person. But given the fact that the empire is worth $16 billion, this is one story that everybody is going to be watching. Have a great day. Thank you.